Well, we'll all be children today. And I'd ask you to respond to me. How many of you have ever moved to a different town or place? Most everybody. We're a moving sort of people. Some people stay exactly in the place. I was 18 years, or in the house I was born in, and until I graduated, we never moved. But many of my friends moved, and that was difficult for them because, well, why is it difficult to move? New friends. You don't have, you leave your old friends behind.
Hairdresser.
You got and Eileen swats in. Yeah, you got to find a new hairdresser and mechanic and church and doctor and dentist. So it's difficult, but it's all the more difficult for Jesus, wasn't it? Because usually when we move, it's not because there is a threat of death hanging over our head. So we can understand the difficulty of Jesus. This is one more thing that he endured, even to the ultimate, for us and for our salvation. So we know the story of Christmas, don't we? We know about angels. We've been singing about it today a little bit, and shepherds and the inn, and there's no room for Jesus. And we like that story. It brings smiles. Because the animals are so cute, and the children who portray them are so beautiful, and there's another story of Christmas that we don't usually read, that we heard just today. And it's not one that we particularly like. I have never seen the story of Matthew portrayed as the children's pageant. Never, ever have I seen what you have just heard and read with me portrayed for Christmas Eve or the children's pageant. Matthew does tell us the story just before this about these three magi or astrologers, sometimes they say king or wise men. That we like that story and we kind of tack it on to the Luke story. But the story of Jesus' birth is short and sweet. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, and then get out of Dodge. Run off to Egypt because this crazy King Herod is going to kill him. Now, I remember going to Bethlehem. We were staying in a hotel just outside of the old walled city of Jerusalem, just outside of the Damascus Gate. And one of the days we stayed in Jerusalem, we were going to go to Bethlehem, which is only about 6 miles away. It's like a suburb. But it took us over an hour to get there because of the security crossing into the Palestinian territory. The foreigners, the tourists at least, were allowed to go, but it was not easy. And once we finally made it through the long line of buses and everybody getting off the buses and the buses being checked themselves and everything that we were carrying being checked, we finally made it to Bethlehem, and there before we got off the bus, it is in Manger Square, and there are all kinds of shops on 3 sides and the Church of the Nativity on the 4th side. And the security guard on the bus says to us, go directly into the church, do not go into any of the shops, because there was tension in the air. And they were worried that it might explode at any time because of the subjugation of the Palestinian people. How much can they take? And so we went into the church, and then when it became our time, we went downstairs into the grotto. It was August. It was 110 degrees. And there we sang some Christmas carols. And it was truly a spiritual pilgrimage. We took a few pictures, and then we were directed to immediately board the bus and do not go into any of the shops or look around Manger Square. I guess, like Mary and Joseph, nobody lingers too long in Bethlehem. And as we were driving out of Bethlehem, the guide pointed out what they have named, or some people believe, as the shepherd's field, where they were watching their flocks by night. And after all of that tension in Bethlehem, we once again had that heartwarming story that Luke tells us that we all like so much. It put us back into the Christmas spirit. But then we had to stop for the security checkpoint once again. And after a long wait there, we were back on the bus, and the guide told us we would be stopping at Rachel's tomb. Now, nobody asked, can we please stop at Rachel's tomb? But there we were. So once again, we got off the bus, and there was a small building there where it was believed that Rachel was buried. That is, Jacob, whose other name became Israel. There, Rachel was buried, Jacob's second wife. And inscribed on the wall in that little tomb, there is this verse from Jeremiah 31 that we heard Matthew quote today. It says, a voice was heard in Ramah, and that's where we were, just outside of Jerusalem, wailing with loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled because they are no more. And I had no idea why that verse from Jeremiah 31 was there. Because I liked Luke's Gospel. And I had forgotten all about this in Matthew's Gospel. Because he quotes that from Jeremiah. Now, just in round numbers, Rachel was 2000 BC. King David, we hear about him a lot at Christmas time, this newborn king. That covenant continues on and finds its fulfillment in Jesus. That's 1000 BC. And just in 586, but if you round it off to 500, that is the time when the Babylonians came in to destroy Jerusalem and conquer the southern kingdom. Finally, it happened. And much of the population was killed. And the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, the educated ones, those who were young and strong and could work, were all sent to this staging area in Ramah, where Rachel's tomb is. And there is what Jeremiah is talking about as he is speaking of the devastation of the Babylonian invasion and destruction of Jerusalem. And that's why he speaks of Rachel, who is sort of like Martha Washington. She's like the mother of the country. And now Rachel again, who died in childbirth at the birth of her second son, Benjamin. Now Rachel, all of Israel is weeping again. And now here, only a few miles from Rachel's tomb, is Bethlehem. And the slaughter of the Holy Innocents, which if you look in the calendar, that's marked and remembered today. So Rachel, Israel, is weeping once again. And there we have this understanding of the reality of why Jesus is coming into this world. Yes, it is to bring joy, but it is also a reminder that God is with us in our weeping and in our lamentation, in the fullness of what the human condition is all about. So standing at the tomb of Rachel, I did not connect the inscription about her weeping over the death of her children, because when Bethlehem is only a couple miles away, because I was avoiding this Christmas story of Matthew. Matthew tells the terrible side of the story of the calculating Herod, who sent out his soldiers to kill all the boy babies under 2 years old. And it is in this context that Rachel, all of the nation, is now weeping once again, because another foreign emperor, another foreign power has come to destroy that which God created. Now it was the Babylonians. So it is this history of humanity that is repeated again and again. But it is also a reminder that we did not hear, that if you read in Jeremiah, he says all of Israel, Rachel, all of Israel is weeping. But he goes on to say, keep your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears. For these who are taken off to Babylon will come back to the land, and there is hope for your future, says the Lord, that your children shall come back to their own country. And that is why this promise, even in the midst of the most horrible things of this world, comes this promise as well, that even as Jesus experienced all the difficulties that we as human beings experience, that he is the one to bring this joy and hope, that we can wipe our tears and rejoice in his being Emmanuel. Matthew says this at the very beginning of the story. He says, and his name shall be Emmanuel. If you notice, at the very end of Matthew's gospel, maybe some of you have this memorized from the Catechism, the Great Commission, go therefore unto all nations, teaching and baptizing. And then comes the promise, for I will be with you, which is Emmanuel, to the end of the age. Yes, so whether Rachel is rejoicing or weeping, God is with us from the beginning to the end. God is coming to us in our times of joy and in our times of sorrow with love and comfort to empower and save us no matter what our human situation is. There may be a time where you feel that you are not with God because of sorrow or doubts or fears. But Jesus reminds us, his life, his death, and his resurrection, that there is never a time when God is not with you. Amen.
Amen.